But for the moment, let's just have a quick chat about US President Joe Biden, because he's announced his intention to run for a second term in the White House today. Now, in a campaign video released this morning, Biden pledges to finish the job and continue his fight against what he calls Republican extremism. But will the job finish him? Already the oldest president in history, Biden would be 86 by the end of a second term. His blunders are already subject to daily scrutiny.
10, 12, 15. Oops, stepping on them. That's black. Anyway.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Valen.
The president asked me to be in charge of managing that piece, then President Trump. Excuse me, Freudian slip. That was the last president. He caused, anyway, that was President Obama.
Joining us now is the environmentalist and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's father, Stanley Johnson. Welcome, Stanley.
God, I thought you were going to say former father.
Former Prime Minister's father.
Really?
It's a tongue twister.
I'm worried about that.
Stanley, let's start with Joe Biden's age. He's a bit over the hill, isn't he?
I don't agree with that at all. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you know, he's got the whole world in front of him. If I think about it, looking at Konrad Adenauer, he was 87 when he gave up, and Biden's not going to be 87, even if he serves the whole term.
But you saw that video there. He gets into these blunders. He's tripping upstairs. He's falling off bikes. Surely there's big concerns about the man with his finger on the nuclear button.
We all fall off bikes. I have been falling off bikes all my life. And I think, actually, you think what he's actually done in terms of the experience which he brings to this job is worth going. And in any case, where are the candidates? Where are the other people stepping forward?
I was going to ask you that, because it's a pretty serious question here, isn't there, about the fact that, you know, OK, you say that age isn't a problem. Some people would disagree with you, and they might think that it's not a particularly good look for the President of the United States to be, for example, forgetting the name of the British Prime Minister.
Which one?
But,
there has been a few, yeah.
And that's fair enough, but it was a pronunciation issue, not forgetting the name entirely. But I think the question really is, for the party, why have they not been able to find a better candidate?
It is a very good question. Now, maybe, you know, Kamala Harris didn't quite get there. Maybe she will get there next time round. I don't think he's going to do another term. He's not allowed to do another term, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a mystery to me why there have not been another good Democratic candidate.
If they had an age limit, for example, they'd be forced to look elsewhere, wouldn't they? I mean, that would be a cut-off point.
Yes, I don't know of a society where there are age limits for...
Well, there are age limits for driving. You have to be a certain age to drive.
Do you think the age limits for being a president? Well, I go back to it. If I think of, as it were, the alternatives to Mr. Biden in terms of him not winning the election, I say to myself, look, stick with what you know here, because I would say, and of course I'm speaking as environmentalist, very kindly Harry introduced me as an environmentalist, I look at what Mr. Biden has done quite recently on the environment, and it's pretty good news. The so-called strangely named Inflation Reduction Act is actually all to do with environmental policy, and it's good stuff. So I am batting for Biden here. I don't think these gaffes are particularly important. Someone came in today and said Piers Morgan is not well because he's been poisoned by sushi. I said, well, who's Susie? You know, people do make some mistakes, obviously.
But the problem is, I think what voters will wonder is, you know, he is the leader of the free world. Should his age and should his mental status be a concern to people?
Let's go back. Let's have a little bit of historical perspective here. Gladstone, well over 80 during his last administration. Adenauer, I've already mentioned. Ronald Reagan was getting up to 80. I think he might even have been 80 by the time he stepped down. Nobody's saying that Reagan wasn't a good bet.
Stanley, while we've got you here, there's a question I've been meaning to ask you. Next time I see you, am I going to be calling you Sir Stanley Johnson.
No, I have absolutely no idea. I don't no idea what you're talking about. Happily, I've been abroad.
Reportedly, you're on your son's resignation honours list. Would you accept a knighthood?
I have no idea about anything of that nature. And in any case, even if I did have an idea, as I understand it, etiquette is such that you never ever mention.
Oh, he must have given you the
Yeah.
nod.
No, let's move on. Back to Biden.
Would you accept it, though?
Back to Biden. I'm biding Biden my time on this one.
I don't think that was a denial. I think that was. I think you left the door open.
Well,
there.
we may well find out this week.
No.
But, you know, speaking of Boris Johnson, there've been, I mean, you read the newspapers, there've been some interesting revelations about his response to the Brexit vote today. Anthony Seldon extracts, of course, from his reporting, suggesting that Boris said, crikey, I didn't expect that. We don't have a plan.
Well, now you catch me here because I was a Remainer. Am I allowed to admit here in the Holy of Holies that I was a Remainer? I'm not only was a Remainer, I fought to keep us in. We set up an organisation called Environmentalists for Europe. We fought rather hard, and I was determined that we didn't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater as far as all of the environmental policies are concerned. And actually, I've still been doing that, you see, because I was really worried by this something called retained European environmental legislation, which, you know, this is Mr. Rees-Mogg's plan to scrap all the environmental laws. So, coming back to the substance, your question. Yes, of course, it was a strange.
But do you
moment.
think he said it?
What he was reported to have said by Mr. Seldon, he probably Sir Anthony.
Cheers,
Seldon.
Sir Anthony. You'll be,
I was
you'll be
worried
joining
about,
him.
worried
There's
about
probably
that.
a club.
Sir Anthony was something like crikey or something. Crikey, did we do
Well, he
it?
said we don't have a plan. Was that right?
Well, not everybody who wins has a plan. You know, sometimes the first step is to win. You don't necessarily have a fully fledged plan. But that said, I think he had to live through the consequences, as we all have.